Welcome to the City Current Show. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. We're always honored to bring you inspiring stories of individuals and organizations making a difference and powering the good. And in this case, we're talking about your career trajectory. We're talking about changes, working remotely, interviewing, resumes, and so much more. We're going to have some fun because we're honored to be joined by Tammy Alvarez, CEO and founder of Career Winners Circle. How are you doing?
Jeremy, I could not be any better. Thank you for that intro. And we've got a lot to cover in a really short period of time.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and dive in. Let's start though with a little bit of your backstory. When you talk about being the founder, give us some of your backstory that led you to launch the organization.
Absolutely. I started my career in and around Wall Street, and I spent 20 plus years in Wall Street and ultimately ended up as a C-level executive. So at the maximum height of my career is managing 2,000 people, 32 countries, solving some of the biggest problems, and having so much fun doing it. And I was known as a transformation expert because I love change and just bringing organizations forward. And I loved every bit of it until one day I didn't. And it just felt like same acronym, different, it was all the same problems. And so very shortly after that, I decided I don't want to do this anymore. I cashed out of Wall Street, moved to a tropical island in Central America off the coast of Belize, and started this company, having no idea how to be an entrepreneur. I knew how to lead. I knew all the problems. So this was a whole new journey for me. And 5 years later, we're thriving. We've got 7 coaches. We're serving customers all over the world in leadership development, career strategy, and also business advisory. So it's been quite a journey.
Well, it goes to show you know how to be successful and build your own career, and now you get to help others do the same. And so let's go ahead and talk about the different areas of specialization, because I kind of alluded to it on the front end, but you cover a wide spectrum. So walk us through the different areas of specialization for you and your team.
Sure. And they all blend together. I mean, I think when you think about career and leadership and company performance, you can't really separate them out. And so we work with clients on career strategy. So our core sweet spot there are mid to senior level leaders who are tired of the soul crushing grind. They get that pit in their stomach on Sunday night. It's like, I can't believe I have to do this again, but I can't sell everything and live on a yurt. So I need to figure, I got a big boy or a big girl job and I've got to figure this out. So we really help them create their second act, if you will. And sometimes that goes into entrepreneurship and sometimes that goes into a different corporate role. We're always working on leveling up leadership skills. Leadership is such a rare commodity these days in terms of good leadership that everyone benefits from that, whether you are managing people directly or whether you're just leading through influence in terms of your peers or coworkers to get things done. And then we also do a lot of advisory work for CEOs of small to mid-sized companies and the leadership development and business performance work for companies of all sizes.
Where do you frame, with your perspective, where we are in this point in time? Because I think when you talk about leadership, there's a lot going on. Managing a hybrid workforce that's, some want to be fully remote, others want, to be in the office part-time, others want you in the office full-time. So you have those components. You have inflation, recession, and managing through constant change and, pivots. But how do you frame kind of where we are in this moment related to leadership and career trajectory?
I think we're coming back to balance. Pre-COVID, it was very employer driven. It was, a tight economy, all of those things. Then COVID happened and it was like the year of the employee, right? Where everyone suddenly realized, wait a minute, I can do my job from home. I actually like my family and I want to stay here. And I'm really tired of that hour-long commute. And then, so now I think we're coming back like everything else from a pendulum swing, and we're coming back to an inflection point. And, where there's more of a blend, there's always going to be drama in the economy. Always. Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. But I believe that during times of chaos, there's opportunity. And that applies to career changers, leaders, who are trying to level up their leadership, and business leaders who are trying to figure out how they play in the changing dynamics. And so whenever things are going sideways, there's winners and losers, and you've got to pay attention and be ready to take advantage of those opportunities and realize that, hang on, I'm on a sinking ship. I've got to make a change, or there's opportunities that I've not thought about before that I need to take advantage of. And it's getting people prepared to be able to do that personally and professionally that is really, really important to make sure that you're thriving no matter what the economy or life is throwing at you.
Let's go ahead and dive into career strategy. Let's start with those who are looking at trying to find the perfect fit. So resume, interviewing skills, let's kind of stay into that bucket or dive into that bucket. Where do you like to start in terms of someone who's looking for the right fit? The questions to start having them ask, the soul searching, where do you like to start with them to guide them in the right direction?
Sure. Most people have what I call an accidental career. You don't sit there and say, well, you do when you're little, and then you're not what you thought you wanted to be when you're little. And so when you're thinking about what does my perfect career look like, we don't look inside. We're worried about what's going to make the most money. What does my family expect me to do? What am I educated to do? What are my neighbors doing? Because let's face it, I've got to have the Tesla too, if everyone else does. And so we've got all these things. And at the end of the day, when you finally get rid of those trappings and realize that it all starts with you, what lights you up? What are the things that you could do for 12 hours a day and never get tired? We are all good at a lot of things and we can be flexible, but there are very, very few things that get you so excited that you are just like the Energizer Bunny. And when you start there and you realize that loving your job, because our thing is that you have to love every Monday. That's what we're all about, is loving Mondays again. And when you realize that that's not a luxury item, it's actually critical, because your career bleeds into every other part of your life. And I think if your career has gone through highs and lows, you know, if you look at your whole life satisfaction, when you're knocking it out of the park with your career, everything else seems to be really good. And then when you get that crappy boss that's driving you nuts and you're like, the whole world changed around you, and now you're stuck in this, soul crushing grind, all the other things start to not be as good either. And so when you start with what lights you up, and when you don't compromise on being able to love every Monday again, everything else falls into place. But those are the two core foundational elements that we start with our clients.
Give us one of your top tips around the resume.
The resume comes last. Everyone is so focused on the resume. And even if you have the most beautiful resume ever, if you're not talking to the right people, saying the right things, it's not going to get you where you want to go. And I want people to think about the hiring process as a buying process. The person who's hiring you, this is the biggest buying decision that they will make without using their own money, pretty much ever. Because think about the impact a hire has, right? If it's a good hire, you're a rock star, you get to go home and have dinner with your family, you get promoted, everything is better. And you have that bad hire and things get really bad. And so this is a buying decision. And if you don't know, and the other mistake people make is they believe that if we go broad, and just cast a wide net in what we're looking for, that we'll have better opportunities. But it doesn't work that way, because if you talk to everyone, you speak to no one. And so what you really need to do is niche in, know who you're talking to, understand what they need, and make yourself the connection between where they are and what they want. So until you've done that work, your resume is not going to say what you want it to say. It is sales collateral, right? This is between this and your LinkedIn profile, which is actually where they go first. Those are the two most important tools that you have, but you've got to understand why you're different and better, what your target people want most, and become that person who can deliver that. And so that's why the resume comes last.
Yeah, that's awesome advice and perspective. Carry that into then a recommendation for how to build those relationships, because just like you're talking about, it's a buying decision, but everything is built on trust and relationships, right? In this world we live in. And so when you talk about getting the opportunity through the person, the relationship, and starting to build that trust, how do you recommend someone to start to navigate that process?
Okay. And you're absolutely right about that. Jeremy, without those relationships, if you've got more than 10 years experience, you've got less than a 10% chance of getting a job through a job board. And yet so many people are addicted to these job boards, and then they submit their resumes, they get ghosted, and then they think they suck. And you go into this whole, spin cycle where when you think about your relationships, what I would encourage you to do is think about three things. One, do not fall for the vanity metrics. When you're like, I've got 5,000 connections, everybody's liking my posts. No one cares. If people can't pick you out of a crowd of one, and it doesn't count, right? So don't fall for those vanity metrics. I used to manage a sales team earlier in my career, and I would have these sales guys come in and be like, oh, this CIO knows me, or I know this CIO, I know this person, I know that person. I'm like, that's great, but did they know you? Like, if you ran into them in the mall, would they say hi? Because if they don't know you, it doesn't count. And so you really need to focus on where you've got meaningful relationships that have been built through actual work. And because most of us suck at networking, we don't keep in touch with people, and you feel bad. Like, oh, I don't want to call this person, and I haven't talked to them in years. Maybe they don't remember me. Maybe they never really liked me. And so get rid of all the fear and reach out before you need to. And you'd be surprised how many people that you've worked with in the past that you've had, kind of gone to battle with, will come back and just reignite those relationships before you need them. So in terms of, you've got to have this. If you don't, it is a long, hard slog and you're going to hate it. But if you know that you're only a couple phone calls away from introductions and having really good conversations, then it becomes fun because you talk about the war stories, you remember when, what's happening to so-and-so, and it just is very much an alumni feeling. So get in and get back into that connections. And the last thing I'll talk about is diversifying your network. We don't do that, right? We meet people along the way, we get rid of the schmucks, we hang on to the ones we like, and that's it. And so make sure that you're really thinking in a more diverse way in terms of cultural, economic, industries, happen to government sector, academics. So really look at who you have. And if they all look like you, act like you, and work in the same places, you've got a problem. And you've got to start to broaden that network and get more diverse. So that way you've got more opportunities, no matter which way you decide to go with your career.
Let's dive into the group that has a job, have a career in place, but they want to move up. And so give us a couple of your thoughts around climbing the corporate ladder.
Okay. I've done that my whole career, right? So it's something that's near and dear to my heart. And I think if you're ambitious, and if you really want to grow your career, doing this during times of uncertainty and chaos, which is pretty much every day these days, is your best opportunity. So when everybody else is hiding under their desks, hoping they don't get fired, this is your chance to surge. And what you do is you need to find that project that is really important, but no one wants to touch. So I'm a New Yorker. I called it the Third Rail Project, and I built my career on these. And what they are in New York City on the subway, if you touch the third rail, you die. That's why we called it the Third Rail Projects. And so these aren't the doormat projects that no one cares about, but makes you feel busy. These are the hard stuff that are important to the whole organization, that are complicated and hard to manage. And you can do this at any scale, right? You can do this big, or you can stay within your department, but find something important that needs to get fixed and no one's doing it. And offer to take accountability for that, because what's going to happen is not only are you going to be shown as a leader who can be bold, but you're also going to collaborate with a ton of people that don't work for you. And leading through influence is one of the hardest things anyone can do. If you lead through hierarchy, you own their bonus. You're going to get a very different reaction than someone who can say, I'm busy, go away. And so when you can solve those hard problems in a collaborative way, you're going to find that your career will explode. And in most cases, when I did those types of things, I would organize myself out of a job. And then, because of course, the only job available was one that's a little bit higher. And so you can reorg yourself out of a role. But what I'm saying is be ambitious. Be clear about, wanting to help solve hard problems, and then do the work and build the skills that it takes to be able to do that.
Give us one thought for those now in the leadership roles. So they've climbed the ranks, they're in the C-suite, but now they're dealing with so many more complex problems and they hate Mondays. And so give us something that is a little fuel to the fire to recalibrate, reorganize their perspective to make them love Mondays.
Yeah, and there's a few schools of thought while you're in role, right? If you hate Mondays, you need to change it. No question about it. So many of my clients, especially that are in that C-suite, are afraid they're going to have to take a step back if they make a meaningful change. And the toys and the tools and all the houses and all the things, like, you can't do that. And so, while you're in role, find something you're passionate about. So in my career, there's maybe 2 or 3 times where everything was perfect. I love the work, the people, the challenge, but most times not everything was perfect, but I'd latch onto the thing that was most important to me. So it might have been the actual work itself, or it might have been the team. So I dove in and helped my team get where they wanted to go. But find something you're passionate about where you're sitting and put all of your energy into that, because that's going to not only make a difference for the organization, but you're also going to get into a better headspace. And that way you can make better decisions for yourself. And then when you're in that headspace, then you either negotiate a role that gets you out of the soul crushing grind, or you leave. Right. And that process of finding another role, it's an interesting change when you decide to make a career change at that level, because you typically will move into something similar, not completely different, but similar related, but you're going to go into a different sphere. Typically it's bigger people, bigger companies that are moving into smaller organizations, because you're having a bigger footprint, a bigger impact, and a bigger paycheck. And so, so if you don't love Mondays, know that you have to change it. Lean into the things that you're positive about where you are to get you over the hump, but it's time to make a change if you don't.
Yeah, so much good stuff. We'll definitely have to bring you back, or even put you on a Changemakers podcast so we can go in even deeper on these. So lots of amazing content and helpful advice. But let's go ahead and switch over now and talk about just where people can go to carry this conversation forward and reach out and connect with you and your team. So mention website, social media. Where can we connect in and carry these conversations forward?
Right. So you can grab us on our website, careerwinnerscircle.com. You can hit us up on LinkedIn and YouTube, both same channels, right? Career Winner Circle for both of those. Or me personally, Tammy Alvarez on LinkedIn. And then after, or very closely near the first of the year, you can also keep an eye out for a book that I'm close to having published called Escaping the Career Trap: Transforming Your Apathy into Ambition and Loving Every Monday Again. So we'll have that available by the end of the year.
Awesome. Once again, the website, careerwinnerscircle.com. So careerwinnerscircle.com. Tammy, thank you for being a wealth of information.
Yes,
so much fun having you on the show. Thank you for all you do and for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It was a great time.